Hey guys, it's SD, your host of the Life Picks Relationship podcast, where people with all sorts of backgrounds, challenges, and life experience show us how they make their relationship extraordinary. Hey guys, we're here today with Lorraine Aras. How are you?
Good. How are you?
So glad to be here. You want to tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. So I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And what we do, it's a little bit different because a lot of people, you think about, classic psychology, people lying on a couch and, just free associating. What MFTs do is we look at relationships and how they affect us on a day-to-day basis and how the space in between ourselves and our partners and our friends and our family, how that can be a very important piece to the puzzle and how we can readjust our communication styles and understand ourselves a little bit better than we did before.
Cool. Now, you want to start by telling us, what is vulnerability? Why is it so important? Why do we need it in our relationships?
So vulnerability is a really important piece to the puzzle because when we think about being in a relationship, especially with our partner, we have to, not only keep track of ourselves and have our jobs taken care of and our family and all of our personal needs, but we turn to our partner for support. And if we have a hard time putting that out there to them or not really being in a place where we can say, hey, I really need this from you, it's going to create a block. And a lot of times people will get into arguments just because there's a simple misunderstanding or something isn't shared. So vulnerability is a really important piece to that, and having someone really see what you're feeling and being your most true self and having that acceptance with you and your partner.
Yeah, so how does one become more vulnerable?
So that is a process. There's some people that are very much at home with that and they're okay with it. But I think there's always this element of fear that we all have. And I think it's always good to start in our close relationship because we already have deeper level of trust. And I think one of the most important steps that you can take a look at is really sit back and think, what is it that I need to feel safe and secure? And what does happiness mean to me? And I think when you take a look at that, you can really start to be honest with yourself about that other day, when I got so mad at my friend or my partner because they forgot about this particular event. Maybe that was because I need to tell them how important this is or express it in a different way. And I think that really opens up the channels of talking about our feelings. So that's one way. It is very hard because I think a lot of people were raised to be tough and cut our emotions off from the situation and power through it. And that takes a little bit more finesse, and that's okay because this is like something that happens with a lot of people and it's normal. And what you can do is sit down with your partner and practice communicating these needs in a safe way. Of course, it's always helpful to go to therapy and have a therapist help intervene. But one thing that you can do that's very helpful is practicing I statement and having scheduled meetings to sit down and talk about something that might have happened or an ongoing conflict. And I statements are skill because it doesn't come easy. I do it a lot myself, and I always catch myself going into saying a you statement. And I'll give an example of this. So an I statement is saying, I'm feeling really upset that this didn't happen because, and everyone's inclination is to go into the you because you forgot to do this. But I think it's good sometimes to kind of stop right there when you start going into the you and really focus on how you're feeling and why you're feeling that way. So it is a skill, and I tell everyone to go really slow and keep practicing it because the second you go into that you, people start getting defensive and you're moving away from vulnerability. And that's why it's such an interesting skill to practice on a daily basis because you really you stop yourself and I'm like, oh, I'm going into blaming again.
Yeah. So you goes into blaming, and I also forces you to express your feelings, forces you to take responsibility and show what you're really feeling about the situation. And yeah, I also like what you said about taking the time to actually practice it. So when you're in the middle of a discussion and afterwards you already have had practice confidence of knowing and being able to go and do that. Yeah, so that's really good. What happens if a couple doesn't have vulnerability?
Usually what you see, and this isn't always, but you do see this dynamic, and they call it pursuer distancer. So one person, and those words are so strong, but I always have to remind myself, the pursuer is the person that wants to go in and be vulnerable and talk and feel and figure things out. And the distancer is someone that pulls away. They have that vulnerability. I don't want to say phobia, but they pushed away from it because it's not a comfortable feeling for them. They were told you can't do that. That's being weak. So they pull away, and it creates this feeling of someone pulling away from them. So you usually see that dynamic. Sometimes it shifts because no one's assigned to those roles for life, but it's more of a reaction to the situation. So in order to work on vulnerability together, there does need to be this moment in time where you really empathize with your partner and see, that we all kind of have these very pure intentions of partner and these deeper feelings and I always see it, when you see a couple and you talk about like, well, what do you want? What do you want? They want the same thing. Underneath all of it, they really want to connect and help their partner, but day-to-day life comes up and, things get misconstrued and miscommunicated, and having that space to sit down and really talk about what are our goals here? Like, what do you want to do? And I think to your question, I think that's a really good starting off point of developing this empathy and understanding, is sitting down and saying, what is it that we're trying to do here? Like, what do we need to do every day? Where do you want to go with our relationship? Do you agree that we're not communicating about how we feel? Because I think it's a really good starting point to clear the air and really talk about what's at the heart of the issue. Because sometimes our behavior and our feelings don't always match up.
Many times that is because of fear. So if somebody really wants to be vulnerable, they know that it's good for their relationship, but they had, let's say, either in the past or they still have this really big fear. What do you suggest they do so that way they could get over their fear and start being more vulnerable?
It's a good question. That is going to take time, and everyone's in a different place. And it's certainly understandable that someone that's gone through that and has this belief to really step out of that role and say, boom, I'm going to be vulnerable tomorrow. It's a process. So one thing that person can do is, I always say, definitely look into going therapy, having someone to talk through some of these things that come up and really understand them, because it's my belief, once you understand how it functions in your life and how it came about, you can stop yourself when it happens. You're like, oh, I'm doing that thing again. And I will say that pretty upfront. I'm a big believer in it, obviously. But also, I think two things. If the person is not aware that this is an issue and this is their partner, expressing this concern, that is a conversation that they need to have more so around communication. If someone is looking in the mirror and saying, I need to work on being more vulnerable, this is really important. My partner, my children, being able to sit down and understanding yourself. Journaling is very helpful. Getting support from family and friends, therapy, which I mentioned already, and, talking to your partner about it and saying, listen, I may need your help. And I think they're all at varying different levels, obviously, but it's always good to turn and ask for support from people around you, because it's just going to strengthen your relationship even more.
Yeah. Obviously, we all are scared or have this fear of vulnerability on some level, right? We don't just go open up everything to everyone, and it's not meant to be like that. But
Sure.
Someone who has this real fear, do you think it could many times be the problem they don't trust their own self first?
You mean they don't trust that they can handle a situation?
Yeah,
Or
they can't. Right. Yeah. Both don't trust, and they can't also acknowledge their own feelings and realizing that that's okay.
Yes, and that's definitely the example I gave for someone who's really struggling with it, and they may not even realize that this is something that's prevalent in their life. And I think that people that are in their life supporting them, having someone turn to them. So if this is their partner, their family, their friends, what have you, says to them, listen, I'm really concerned because I know that you feel I want to talk to you, but every time I turn to you, I feel that you go somewhere and I don't know where you're going. And encouraging someone in that way, letting them know, like, I'm here. Like, if you ever want to talk, I'm here. Because I think it's important to let other people know that we're present and we can hold them emotionally, so to speak, if they do need to talk and they do need support. So I always believe that everyone can change. This is simply a matter of developing trust that you can handle this, because everyone can handle it. We are built to do that. We're built to be resilient and grow and become happy people. And I think that if we have people around us letting them know, like, hey, I'm concerned, I'm here, if there's anything that you need, I think that continual message is going to be so meaningful over time.
Yeah, vulnerability really is something that grows over time. And even someone who can be vulnerable over the years and over time, as they become more vulnerable, it just deepens and strengthens the whole relationship. Yeah. What advice would you give to someone who wants to have an extraordinary relationship?
I would definitely say, it's kind of funny, but I would go on. There is this great test called the 5 Love Languages. Take that with your partner.
Yes, yes.
Because you find out so many interesting things, because everyone thinks, and I always hear this, I always hear them saying that, this person, I gave them a gift and they barely acknowledge it. And I'm always showing them that I love them. And they're saying, but I do appreciate that. And what it comes down to is they express their love in a different way. And I think that is something, every time I, talk to a friend or anyone, I'm like, take that test, because you learn so much about yourself and so much about your partner. So I will say that much, but I really believe in communicating and being clear, practicing I statements, scheduling time to check in with that person once a day about what's going on with them, and having like a conversation. I'm big in face-to-face conversations, no texting, how you feel, what happened that day and what you need from your partner. And if it's space, it's space. If it's not, and you need them to hug you, so be it. But I think that is such a critical piece to a relationship. There's going to be hard times. There's going to be great times. It is what it is. We can't avoid it. It's life. But having these things in place that are, to me, they're small, but they're so important for, long-term happiness and communication.
Yeah, I think also when you check in with your partner and you know what they're up to, then you understand why they're acting certain ways. If later on they get upset about something, you know that they had a really busy day and they're really stressed and they're overwhelmed. So it's more understandable. You're on the same page. Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. It's great having you.
Thanks for having me. Likewise.
Did you enjoy that episode? Could you do me a personal favor and subscribe and leave a review? It would mean a lot to me. Thank you so much and have an awesome day.